Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try, life just seems to be against you? That your dreams are slipping away, your relationships are falling apart, and your finances seem stuck in a cycle you cannot break? Today, I am going to show you that what seems lost is not gone, and that God can not only change your situation, He can completely restore your circumstances beyond your imagination. Brothers and sisters, let me ask you, how many of you have faced a moment in life when you felt hopeless, as if everything you worked for has come to a standstill? I want you to know something powerful today. God specializes in turning setbacks into setups, problems into blessings, and trials into testimonies. Many people give up too soon, believing that their situation is permanent. But I am here to tell you, nothing is impossible with God. If you stay with me today, you will discover the secrets to restoration that can change your life forever. I am not talking about small fixes. I am talking about full restoration, where God reverses every loss, heals every wound, and turns your impossible into miraculous. Now let's dive into the 3 key principles that will guide you into restoration. Have you ever lost something so precious that it felt as though your world had crumbled around you? Perhaps it was a job you had poured your life into, only to be told one day that it was gone. Maybe it was a relationship that you thought would last forever, and suddenly it was shattered, leaving a void you didn't think you could ever fill. Or perhaps it was your health, your peace of mind, your reputation, or even the dreams that you had carried in your heart for years. I want you to know this today. What has been lost is not beyond restoration. God has a plan to restore every single thing that has been taken from you, and He can do it in ways you never imagined possible. You see, loss is not the end. It is often the beginning of a greater chapter. Many people look at loss and see defeat. They look at what is gone and think that life is over. But God looks at what is gone and sees potential for restoration. He looks at the ashes of your life and sees the opportunity to build something new and glorious. The Bible tells us in Joel 2:25, "I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." This is a promise that what has been destroyed, taken, or lost through hardship, misfortune, or even through your own mistakes can be restored. Restoration is not a distant possibility. It is a divine certainty for those who trust in Him. Think for a moment about the prodigal son. He left his father's house, took what he could, squandered it all, and found himself in despair. But notice what happened. He returned. And when he returned, not only was he accepted back, he was restored. The father did not scold him endlessly. He did not remind him of his failures. He restored him. He clothed him, gave him a ring, and celebrated his return. This story is not just about forgiveness, it is about restoration. God can take what seems lost, what seems impossible to reclaim, and bring it back to you, even better than before. The same God who welcomed the prodigal son back into fullness is the God who can welcome your losses back into your life. Restoration can take many forms. Sometimes it comes as a new opportunity in your career. You may have lost a job, and it felt like there was no way forward. But God may bring a door of opportunity that is even greater than the one you lost. I have seen countless lives where doors closed, only for God to open doors that no human could imagine. It could be a promotion, a new business venture, a ministry, or even a completely different path that you never considered before. What was lost becomes the foundation for something greater. Because God does not just restore, He multiplies. Financial restoration is another area where God demonstrates His power. Perhaps you gave faithfully, only to face setbacks, debts, or losses. You may feel that your resources are depleted and your hope is gone. But I tell you, God can restore what the enemy has stolen. He can bless your work, multiply your seed, and turn scarcity into abundance. Restoration is not just about getting back what you had. It is about receiving blessings that exceed your past. Imagine a farmer whose crops failed year after year, only to see the next season yield 10 times what was lost. That is the God we serve. He restores beyond our imagination. Relationships are often the hardest to restore. When trust is broken, when words are spoken in anger, when separation occurs, it feels as though restoration is impossible. But God can restore hearts, heal wounds, and reconcile what was torn apart. I have seen marriages restored, friendships renewed, and families reunited, all because God intervened in ways that human effort alone could never achieve. Restoration does not mean ignoring the pain. It means bringing healing and new life to what was once broken. God can rebuild trust, rekindle love, and bring joy where there was sorrow. Health and peace of mind are also part of what can be restored. You may have faced illness, depression, anxiety, or fear that has robbed you of your vitality. You may feel weak, weary, or defeated. But God is the ultimate healer. He can restore your body, your mind, and your spirit. He can bring you back to wholeness, giving you strength, clarity, and a renewed sense of purpose. Restoration is not limited to material things. It encompasses your entire life, body, mind, heart, and soul. Sometimes God restores in ways that are subtle, almost invisible at first. You may not notice the restoration happening day by day, but if you remain faithful, it becomes clear over time. A relationship may slowly heal, finances may steadily improve, opportunities may gradually arise, and your faith may grow stronger as you witness His hand at work. Restoration is a process, but it is a process guided by divine wisdom and perfect timing. God does not rush, and He does not delay without reason. Every moment of waiting is preparation for a greater restoration. It is important to remember that restoration is not just about reclaiming what you had, it is about transformation. What is restored is often better than what was lost. God has the ability to take your setbacks and turn them into setups for blessings. He can take your failures and use them as lessons that lead to wisdom and insight. He can take your pain and turn it into compassion, strength, and resilience. Restoration in God's hands is not just a return to the past. It is an upgrade, a divine enhancement of your life. Faith plays a crucial role in restoration. You cannot receive what God is ready to restore if you do not believe that He can do it. The moment you surrender your losses to Him, the moment you declare your trust in His promises, restoration begins to move toward you. It may not happen overnight, but it begins. The Bible says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." Trust is the key that unlocks the door of restoration. Stories of restoration are everywhere for those who have eyes to see. There are people who have lost everything: health, wealth, family, reputation. And yet through faith, persistence, and prayer, God restored not only what was lost, but multiplied it beyond their expectations. Each testimony is proof that restoration is real, and it is available to anyone who seeks it with a heart fully surrendered to God. God's restoration is also tied to His timing. Sometimes we want things restored immediately according to our schedule. But God's timing is perfect. He knows the right moment to restore your life in fullness, when it will have the greatest impact, when it will produce the most glory, and when it will bring the deepest joy. Patience is part of the restoration process, and waiting does not mean losing hope. It means trusting that God is orchestrating everything behind the scenes. You may be sitting here today feeling that your losses are permanent, but let me tell you, God specializes in making the impossible possible. He can restore relationships that seem beyond repair, finances that seem depleted, health that seems hopeless, and dreams that seem dead. No situation is too far gone for Him. He is in the business of restoration, and He delights in bringing beauty from ashes, turning mourning into dancing, and transforming despair into hope. Many people desire restoration, but they want it on their own timing. They want it immediately, instantly, and according to their schedule. But let me tell you something today. God's restoration does not operate according to human timelines. Restoration requires faith, and it requires patience. It requires a heart that believes in the unseen and a spirit that trusts in the timing of the Almighty. You may feel that your prayers are not being answered, that your tears are unnoticed, or that your situation will never change. But every moment of waiting, every season of seeming delay is a part of God's perfect plan to bring about a restoration greater than you can imagine. Faith is the key that unlocks the door to restoration. Without faith, nothing moves. You may pray, you may fast, you may sow seeds, but if your heart is doubtful, the power of God cannot manifest in the fullness He desires. Faith is not simply hoping that things will get better. Faith is believing with conviction that God is already at work, even when you cannot see it. It is trusting that the invisible hand of God is orchestrating every detail of your life, setting in motion events that will lead to your breakthrough. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. It is the bridge between your present struggle and God's miraculous intervention. Consider the story of Abraham, who waited decades for the promise of a son. He was promised by God that he would be the father of many nations, but the years went by, and there was no visible sign of that promise being fulfilled. Abraham could have grown weary, he could have given up, he could have thought that God had forgotten him. But he did not. He continued to believe, he continued to trust, and he continued to act in obedience. That is what faith looks like in the process of restoration. Faith does not demand immediate results. Faith endures, it perseveres, and it trusts that God's timing is perfect. Patience is the companion of faith. It is easy to grow impatient when your circumstances do not change as quickly as you desire. It is easy to look around and see others who seem to have it easier, and to question why your restoration has not yet arrived. But patience is not simply waiting idly. Patience is trusting actively while waiting. It is maintaining hope, keeping your heart aligned with God, and continuing to sow seeds even when the harvest seems distant. Patience is the soil in which faith grows, and it is through patience that God perfects His restoration in your life. Many people make the mistake of giving up too soon. They pray for a breakthrough for weeks, months, or even years, and when they do not see immediate results, they abandon hope. But God is never late. He is always working behind the scenes. Every delay is a divine preparation for a greater miracle. Sometimes God allows seasons of waiting to refine your character, to strengthen your faith, and to prepare you for the fullness of restoration. Consider Joseph in the Bible. He was sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. If he had given up faith in God during those years, he would never have become the ruler who saved nations. Patience and faith were the keys to his ultimate restoration. Faith requires action. It is not passive. Restoration often requires you to step out in obedience, even when the outcome is uncertain. You may be called to forgive someone who has wronged you, to make a difficult decision, or to invest your resources when it seems risky. These acts of faith are like planting seeds in the soil of possibility. You may not see immediate growth, but every step you take in faith is preparing the ground for God's restoration to flourish. The Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. Faith is alive when it moves, when it acts, and when it persists in the face of uncertainty. Patience does not mean resignation. It means resilience. It means enduring trials and setbacks without losing hope. It means understanding that God's restoration is not about rushing through the process, but about allowing the process to shape you into someone capable of receiving the fullness of His blessings. Sometimes, if restoration came too quickly, we might not recognize or appreciate it. Sometimes the waiting period is training, molding us into vessels that can handle more, that can steward more, and that can glorify God through more. There is also a spiritual dimension to patience and faith. Restoration often involves spiritual growth as much as material change. God is not only restoring circumstances, He is restoring hearts, minds, and souls. When you exercise faith and patience, you align yourself with God's will. You learn to trust His promises, to rely on His guidance, and to submit to His timing. This spiritual alignment is what allows restoration to last. It is not enough to receive a temporary fix. True restoration transforms your life from the inside out. Many people ask why restoration is delayed. Why does God not act immediately? Why does it feel like everything is against them? The truth is, God's delay is not denial. Delay is often divine strategy. He is orchestrating events, moving pieces, and preparing opportunities that you cannot yet see. Sometimes God delays restoration to protect you from something that would not have been good for you at the moment. Other times, He delays to teach you lessons, strengthen your faith, or prepare others who will be part of your breakthrough. Patience allows you to participate in God's timing rather than trying to force your own. Faith is also strengthened through adversity. When you face difficulties, your faith is tested and refined. Every challenge, every obstacle, every setback is an opportunity to grow closer to God and to trust Him more fully. Restoration requires this refining process because what is restored must be able to endure. The gold must go through fire before it shines with brilliance, and the same is true for your faith. The deeper your faith, the greater your capacity to receive God's restoration. Prayer is a vital expression of faith and patience. Through prayer, you communicate with God, lay your burdens before Him, and seek His guidance. Persistent prayer demonstrates your commitment to trusting God, even when the circumstances seem bleak. It is through prayer that faith is exercised and patience is nurtured. God responds to those who are steadfast in prayer, and often restoration begins in the quiet moments of sincere, persistent communication with Him. Sometimes, faith requires believing against appearances. Your finances may be in crisis, your relationship strained, your health failing, yet God calls you to trust that restoration is coming. Abraham believed in the promise of a son, even when Sarah was past childbearing age. Moses led the Israelites toward the promised land, even when it seemed impossible. Faith is not dependent on what your eyes see. It is anchored in the character and promises of God. Patience and faith together create an atmosphere where God's restoration can flourish. They prepare your heart to receive the fullness of what He has promised. Restoration is not a one-time event. It is a process of aligning your life with God's purposes, trusting His timing, and acting in obedience. Those who exercise faith and patience experience breakthroughs that surpass their expectations because they have positioned themselves to receive God's best. Faith requires hope that is unwavering, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It is easy to lose hope when storms rage around you, but faith says, I may not understand this now, but I trust God's plan. Patience sustains that hope, allowing you to endure long seasons of uncertainty without surrendering to despair. The combination of faith and patience is powerful. It releases the supernatural power of God into your circumstances and prepares the way for complete restoration. Restoration is never just for you. God does not restore in isolation. Every blessing, every miracle, every turnaround in your life is meant to become a testimony, a living proof of His power, His goodness, and His faithfulness. You see, when God restores your circumstances, He is not only bringing back what was lost, He is also demonstrating to the world and to yourself that He is the source of hope victory, and transformation. Restoration is designed to glorify God, to inspire others, and to strengthen your faith in ways that go far beyond the immediate change in your life. Think about Joseph for a moment. His story is a perfect example of restoration that leads to testimony and glory. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. For years, it seemed as though his life had been completely destroyed. But God was working behind the scenes. When Joseph was finally elevated to the position of second in command over Egypt, everything he had endured became a testimony. What was intended for harm was turned into good. His restoration not only blessed him personally, but saved countless lives during the famine. Restoration is never just about personal relief. It is about creating a testimony that glorifies God and encourages others to trust Him. Your testimony becomes a powerful tool for encouragement. When people see your life transformed, they see the reality of God's presence. They see that He is faithful, that He is powerful, and that He is attentive to the needs of His children. Many people have faith only in theory, but your testimony makes faith tangible. It is living proof that God can do the impossible, that He can turn mourning into joy, that He can bring abundance from lack. Restoration is the evidence that faith works, and your story can inspire countless others to believe for their own breakthroughs. Consider how restoration impacts communities, families, and even nations. When one life is restored, it ripples outward. The restored individual becomes a channel of blessing to others. A healed marriage strengthens a family and influences the next generation. A restored business or career provides jobs, resources, and opportunities for others. A recovered health story becomes a source of hope for those suffering similar struggles. Restoration is never selfish. It is inherently outward focused because God's glory is always multiplied through the lives He restores. Restoration also brings glory to God by revealing His character. When people see what He has done in your life, they are confronted with His power, His wisdom, and His love. Restoration is a testimony of God's faithfulness. It declares that He keeps His promises, that He is present even in the darkest moments, and that no situation is beyond His control. People may try to explain your restoration through human effort, luck, or coincidence, but deep down, they recognize that something supernatural has taken place. Your testimony points them to God and invites them to experience His goodness for themselves. Every act of restoration carries a spiritual message. God often allows hardship, loss, and trials so that when restoration comes, the glory is unmistakable. The greater the challenge, the more powerful the testimony. Imagine a person who loses everything to disaster, illness, or betrayal, only to see a complete turnaround. The testimony that emerges is not just about recovery, it is about the undeniable evidence of God's hand at work. It is a living, breathing proof that He is in control and that His plans for His children are unshakable. Restoration also strengthens your own faith in profound ways. When you experience the power of God firsthand, your confidence in His promises deepens. You begin to see that faith is not a concept, it is a living force that produces results. You learn that prayer is not an empty ritual, that patience is not wasted time, and that God's timing is perfect. Each step of restoration teaches you to rely on Him more fully, to trust His plan more completely, and to walk in obedience with greater assurance. Your restored life becomes both a source of personal empowerment and a witness to the transformative power of God. Restoration often brings with it opportunities to minister to others. When you have been through the valley and seen God's restoration, you are equipped to guide others through their struggles. Your experience becomes a source of comfort, encouragement, and wisdom for those facing similar challenges. People are drawn to your story because it resonates with their own struggles. And through your testimony, they encounter God's love and power. Restoration is not just a personal blessing, it is a ministry in itself, a way for God to multiply His work through your life. Glory often follows restoration in unexpected ways. What was once hidden in shame or sorrow becomes a beacon of hope. Your life becomes a platform for God's glory to shine, and His name is lifted up through your testimony. When you share how God has restored your circumstances, you are not boasting about your own strength. You are declaring His faithfulness, His mercy, and His ability to turn despair into triumph. Restoration always points upward. It is never about self-glorification, but about magnifying God's greatness. Consider the practical examples of restoration in daily life. A person who was once in debt may now be financially secure, able to bless others and teach principles of stewardship. A marriage that was once broken may now be thriving, modeling forgiveness and reconciliation. A career that was once stalled may now be flourishing, providing for family and community. Every instance of restoration carries a testimony that reveals the glory of God and encourages those who witness it. Restoration also inspires hope in those who are still waiting. Your testimony becomes a signpost for others that no situation is too far gone for God. People who have lost faith, who have endured long seasons of difficulty, who have felt hopeless, see your story and are reminded that God's power is limitless. Restoration serves as a beacon of hope, showing that perseverance, faith, and trust in God are always rewarded. The encouragement that comes from one person's restored life can ripple out to touch hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people, depending on how widely the testimony is shared. There is also a joy that comes from seeing God glorified through restoration. When your circumstances are restored, the peace, gratitude, and praise that arise from your heart honor God. Restoration is not only about reclaiming what was lost, it is about rejoicing in God's goodness, declaring His faithfulness, and living a life that reflects His glory. The joy of restoration is contagious. It spreads to families, communities, and everyone who witnesses the power of God at work. Restoration often leads to new levels of responsibility. When God restores what has been lost, He entrusts you with the ability to steward it wisely. You are called not only to enjoy the blessings, but to use them to bless others, to further God's kingdom, and to expand His influence in the world. Restoration is both a gift and a calling. It empowers you to become an instrument of God's glory, a living testimony that others can look to for guidance, hope, and encouragement. Through restoration, God's glory is magnified in ways that words alone cannot capture. People see the change, feel the difference, and are compelled to acknowledge that something greater than human effort is at work. Restoration is not just about what you gain. It is about the message it conveys, the inspiration it provides, and the glory it brings to God's name. Every restored circumstance is a divine announcement that God is faithful, that He never abandons His children, and that His power is available to anyone who believes.